To this now, US President Donald Trump says his administration intends to run Venezuela until a safe transition can be achieved. That was hours after US troops attacked Venezuela's capital, Caracas, and detained that country's leader, Nicolás Maduro. For analysis on the US attack on Venezuela now, we are joined by political analyst Professor Ibbo Mandaza. Thank you so much for your time, Prof. Let's start here with your reaction to what we are seeing unfolding at this moment.
Well, I think our reaction is no different from most of the world, most of us on the continent, Africa. We issued a statement last night as the global Pan-African movement, and of course we condemned this action. It's unprecedented, almost incredible, that you have the US invading a sovereign country and capturing its head of state. It's outrageous, and I think the reaction, both within the US and outside the US, has been resounding. And it is incredible, but yet when you consider the regime in Washington, the Trump factor, which is trying to reenact the Monroe Doctrine, which sought to ensure that the whole Western Hemisphere, the Americas in particular, were part and parcel of the US sphere of influence. And now you're having Trump assert his objective of ensuring not only the Americas, but even the Western world as a whole as being subservient almost to the US. And today is Venezuela, but already analysts are warning that Greenland could be next. And we saw on Christmas Day the attack by the US forces in Nigeria. And even though the Nigerians tried to rationalize around it, it's clear that the US has done that as a demonstration of its impunity. And we have reason to be afraid that the same could happen to South Africa. Given its very belligerent attitude towards South Africa, and the false claims of what genocide. So we have reason to be afraid, to be worried about the situation. It's a very grave situation indeed.
And I wish to also pick up, Prof, on the point that you just made, particularly when we look at the US and how it is actually using its military power, as we've seen over the past few weeks or so. What does this really say about that country and how it is willing to use its military power, and just what precedent it sets going forward?
On the one hand, it illustrates what a famous philosopher, Lenin, said once, that imperialism cannot survive without war. And now with the era of the industrial military complex at play, it's clear that the US is at war. And we have a war president in charge. He changed the Pentagon, the name of the Pentagon, to the Ministry of War. And already this last year, he has attacked 7 countries. Yes, and so this is a warmonger of note. And likewise, he's Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. And it's clear that the attack on Venezuela is linked also to a possible attack on Cuba in the not too distant future. So that's the first point. The second point is that we are now in a situation where there may be a kind of politics of quid pro quo, in which a kind of an unofficial, unwritten agreement between the members of the Security Council, in particular the US itself, China and Russia, in which case that Russia is given a free hand on Ukraine and China a free hand on Taiwan. And in all cases, it implies that the restraining power, the restraining influence traditionally associated with Russia and China appears to be waning in global politics. Unlike the period of the Cold War, when the Soviet Union and China were deterrents on the warmongering of the Western countries. So we have a reason to be afraid about the current developments and more about the declining role of the counter forces to the imperialist aggression in the form of Russia and China.
And I wish to also just also pick up on that, Prof. You know, Trump says the U.S. intends to run Venezuela until what he calls a safe transition is achieved. Just what do you believe is really driving this decision, and to what extent are Venezuela's oil reserves, regional influence, as well as greater power competition part of this calculation?
Well, it's a renewal of the imperialism par excellence, which is always related to the pursuit of resources, natural resources. And you know, those students of international relations, if you take note, here we're having what happened in 1884, the scramble for Africa, the partition of Africa, the intense conflict which led into the First World War, so-called. All this is being replayed now. We are now right at the center of a whole new play out on the part of the imperialism, as we know it, especially on the economic front. It's clear with respect to Venezuela, and Trump's own statements, betray that objective. Oil and rare earth minerals. It's the same case with the case of Nigeria. It's the same with respect to Greenland. So we are in a new scramble led by the U.S. imperialists, as we rightly describe them.
And I'm sure there must be risks, some sort of risks associated with all of this, Prof. Just talk to us about the risks when you have an external power now assuming temporary control over another country's political future in a way.
Well,
All right, that's Professor Ibbo Mandaza there talking to us and giving us a reaction on what we have been seeing happening there in Venezuela insofar as the US is concerned. Also just giving us there some reaction to all of this that is currently unfolding. We'll try and get him back on the line a bit later on in the program for his insights, so you can continue to enjoy the benefits of that conversation. And I know that you are back with us now, Prof. Let's just continue and get a sense from you in terms of the risks that arise when, you know, an external power assumes temporary control over another country's political future. What would those risks be? Can I ask you to switch on your video as well?
Yes, okay. No, I think that the high risk is that of a massive resistance movement in Venezuela itself. As has happened in previous generations in Latin America. US imperialism has provoked in the 20s and 30s, right into the 60s and 70s, a massive reaction in terms of the resistance of the people in those countries. So I think the high risk for the US is precisely that they would engulf themselves, end up in real big problems within Venezuela. Not unlike what has happened before in all the countries in which the US has recently intervened, whether it's Iraq, whether it's Libya, whether it's Afghanistan. we see a situation in which the American intervention has never been able to achieve the objectives for which they say they're going into action in those countries.
And Prof, what does this mean for ordinary Venezuelans in terms of their future right now and looking at their future economically as well as in terms of security?
It's a very grave situation indeed for Venezuela. But the reports we're getting of a firm response on the part of the Venezuelans, especially the government, indicate that the US will not have an easy ride in this matter.
Right.
And what's more important is also the response within the US itself. The fact that Congress has not been consulted, the fact that most people like Bernie Sanders, people like Jeffrey Sachs, and major influences in the American polity have spoken loudly against the action of Trump and Rubio.
All right. Prof, I must thank you so much for your time and insights on the program. That's political analyst Professor Ibbo Mandaza joining us there to add his voice to the reactions that we've seen come through after what has happened there in Venezuela. Thanks so much for your time on the program.